Good morning. How are you guys today? It is Thursday. I haven't been on in a couple weeks, but I wanted to follow up on the monthly thing I kind of had on values. And so a couple weeks ago, I did post um, about values and what your thoughts on values were. And I put a little quiz on there for you to kind of go through if you wanted a free thing you could click on to see what your core values were. And so hopefully you did that. And if you did, I think that's great. And I would love to hear more about it. So feel free to DM me of what you learned or figured out. So today I wanted to focus on how you teach values to your kids and what the 8 core values that are the most important for children and teaching them. And so what that means is basically just 8 things that are very important that if your kids kind of follow these, they should do pretty well, right? They should do well socially, academically, all the things that we want them to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so you can see. So to start with, the 8 values would be honesty and integrity, responsibility, trustworthiness, citizenship, respect, self-discipline, caring, and kindness and cooperation. So those 8 values are really important for all of us, even as adults. And so when you're raising kids, it is important to make sure that they're getting all of these right daily. And so before I did this job as a therapist, I was a school counselor. I did that for about 10 years. And one of the things that I did as a school counselor is I did a class for each of the different grade levels called character education. And so I would teach these. I was actually going into the classroom and teaching lessons on these 8 different values. And it was part of what the county funded. I thought it was great for the kids to learn because a lot of times they don't get it at home. And so I just want to make sure that I told you guys about it because I thought it was really important. And one thing I did like about it a lot is it made it very purposeful for me and kind of put it at the forefront of my mind every time I would go and teach it. And so I think it made me a better person because I was thinking about these things all the time because I was teaching it to the kids. So these were the 8 that I would go through each month with the kids. And so when I was teaching them in the schools, it was very purposeful, right? Like I was going in, I was teaching a lesson, I was reading a book or whatever, but it can also be organic and just happen naturally at home, in the school, at sports, wherever. And so I'm going to kind of go over some ways that you can do that. So the 4 ways I was going to explain is role playing, reading a book, watching TV together, monitoring it and processing it, and then modeling behavior. And that's how you act daily. So how you can address this is pretty simple. And I'm going to go through each of them and then you can kind of take it or leave it as you would like. But I think there's some good examples and they can be helpful for you at home. So the first one is role playing. And so what you would do is say your child comes home from school, someone called them a name. You could go over various ways to respond, right? And then you practice them. So one of the ways maybe to respond is you would let the teacher know, right? So someone calls them a name. One of the things your child could do would be to let the teacher know, and then the teacher could handle it. Okay, so it happens the next day. So you could practice that with your child. So you pretend you're the teacher, have them come up to you and say, so-and-so called me a name, and then you respond how a teacher would respond. But you could also, so it happened again, and then you could also now say, all right, why don't you try and respond to the child? So someone calls you a name, what could you say to them when they say that to you? So one of the things you could say would be like, don't call me a name. I don't like it when you do that. That makes me angry. So then you be the child that calls the name, and then they would role play with you and make the statement, I don't like it when you do that. That makes me angry. So those are 2 choices of things that you can do. You could also talk about ways that would be ineffective, which would be like someone calls you a name, then would you push them? Probably not. So that wouldn't be a great way to respond, but you could role play that as well of like what would happen if you push someone. Well, you're going to get in trouble with the teacher. You're probably going to get in trouble at home. So when you're at home, you have different ways of things that you can practice with your children. And you also know your kid. You know if your kid is someone that will respond well to someone doing that, so they could tell the teacher or express it to the child. You know, if your child is somebody with a short fuse that might go ahead and just push the other kid. So you know what your child is like. So going over the different responses is great practice for them. So it takes away the anxiety, it gives them confidence, it makes them feel prepared when they go into a situation where someone's not being the best person they could be. All right, so that's one way of addressing a value is role playing. Another way is reading a book. And so, say you're having an issue with your own child that they're not being kind to other people. So, one of the things you could do is look on Amazon, go to the library, find a book about kindness or just any book that you might know. And then you would read that and then talk about that and why that character is struggling with kindness. Why are they struggling being nice to people? Has that ever happened to you? And so you kind of go back and forth. So I'll give you an example. So my son, I have a son that's 8, and like last year, I think when he was maybe first or second grade, he was struggling with being kind of bragging, right? And so I'm like, yeah, we don't want to be braggers. So I went on Amazon. I found a book. It was called like Brad the Bragger. And we just read it together at night. And he absolutely loved that book. We would talk about it. And even to this day, he'll come home and be like, so and so is being Brad the Bragger. So it really was effective. He learned a lesson from it. We would talk about what it makes people feel like when you brag. We talked about what he would feel like when he would hear somebody brag. So you can do it with anything. Another thing I did one time with him with a book was when he was really little, actually, was pacifiers. And so we did a book on pacifiers and when you need a pacifier, when you don't need a pacifier. And that was pretty helpful. He was about 3 or 4 when we did that. So that was another really good book about how we would move through a problem or something going on at home. All right. So then the next one is TV or YouTube or whatever. So knowing what your child is watching isn't a choice. Like you have to know what they're watching. So you can't just be like, oh, they're watching Disney Channel or, oh, they're watching Nick or, oh, they're watching YouTube Kids. Yeah, all of those channels and things have inappropriate stuff, even if they say it's appropriate. And they might not be teaching the values or things you want your child to know. So it's really, really, really important that you're knowing exactly what your child is watching. A great website for that is Common Sense Media. And if you look up Common Sense Media, you can pretty much type in any TV show, any book, any movie, and it will give you kind of ratings. And it'll tell you what's being taught in that whatever it is, book, TV. It'll also tell you what parents think about it, what kids think about it, what things are inappropriate, appropriate, all of that. So Common Sense Media is the website. It's great. I use it all the time. So making sure you know what your kids are watching and using that also as a way to talk about values, talk about kindness, honesty, integrity. So I'll give you another example. The other day, Isaac was watching YouTube Kids, or I don't even know if it's kids, just YouTube. And he is with me when he's watching this, right? So he wants to watch this video of this guy that is doing this Roblox game. So Isaac isn't not playing Roblox. He's watching someone play Roblox that is talking about different characters and they're making up scenes. Now, some of it is appropriate and some of it is not. And the reason I was okay with it is because I was there with him. And so I'm listening. And so what I would do is when I heard the guy say something kind of crazy that I'm like, what is he talking about? I would then jump in and say something to kind of contradict or make Isaac think about why that was appropriate or inappropriate. And then we would kind of make a joke about it. So making sure you're paying attention and then chiming in when you feel it's necessary and not being super strict about it, but just being like, wow, that's kind of crazy. That guy would say something like that. I wonder what that feels like. So then Isaac would like chime in back with me and we would kind of go back and forth as we watched this Roblox guy with the YouTube. So it was a very interesting experience if you have not watched any of those yet. Then the final thing is modeling behavior. Now, this is probably the most important one. This is the organic way of addressing values and teaching values. It's how you act and respond every day to issues and events that you're having, and your kids are watching all of it. So make sure you're behaving in a way you would like them to behave. And I know we all try daily. None of us are perfect, but thinking about it and being purposeful in your thoughts when you're talking to someone at the store or you're solving a problem with something that's happened in your life. So think about the words you're using, the tone of voice you have. Are you apologizing? Are you being respectful? Are you being honest? What are your main values that you use daily, and how are you responding in life to those? I'm going to go over them again in case you don't remember. So they're honesty, integrity, respect, caring and kindness, responsibility, trustworthiness, citizenship, cooperation, and self discipline. And so teaching those to your children and paying attention to those eight will help your kid. It'll help them a lot socially, it'll help them in their daily life with the teachers and their classes and sports, all of that. So, if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this is helpful. If you want any book ideas or any TV shows or anything like that, let me know because I have a bunch that I could share with you. And yeah, that's it. I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye.